Welcome back to another Lolita Tips for New Lolitas video. It has been a while since I've been talking about this one, and I'm so excited to finally get this video up for you guys. Enjoy! So, now that you know where to get your dresses and your petticoat, it's time to start building a wardrobe. It's time to go out and buy those dresses, right? Well, let's slow down just a tad. Ugh, you're making me wait again? Apologies, but you don't really want to jump right into buying so soon. There's two major things to consider before you start building your wardrobe, and this video will be covering both of them and why they're important. The first thing is, which substyle are you interested in? Believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many new Lolitas don't consider this before jumping into the fashion. Admittedly, I did the same thing. Many of us did. We weren't thinking about the style of the dress as deeply as we should have, and as such, many of us don't even wear our original purchases anymore, if we still own them. Lolita has several highly recognizable styles, with the main three being classic, gothic, and sweet. There are several other substyles that we'll cover later, but most Lolitas are likely going to be diving into one of those three. It's very important to consider which style interests you the most before you end up buying a dress, as there's nothing worse than believing you've fallen in love with something only to receive it and realize, this really isn't for me. And given how many new Lolitas rush to buy 3 or 4 or more dresses in bulk and just starting the fashion, you could end up with a very early wardrobe that you lose interest in within months. We want to avoid that as much as possible, so we're going to briefly cover these 3 styles and how to select one that most appeals to you. I want to stress that I am by no means saying that you can never experiment with other styles. Your wardrobe can be filled with as many styles as you want. But when you're just starting out, it's ideal for several reasons to narrow it down when you're just getting your foot in the door. We're going to be explaining why in a bit, but for now, let's just talk about styles. The first style we'll be discussing today is classic, and the reason I'm starting with this one is because it's the one I'm least familiar with. I'm not claiming to be an expert on any of the styles I'm going to be discussing here today, but classic is going to be the one which requires the most research on my part. Be sure to always seek information from classic Lolitas as well as the ones you see in this video. Classic Lolita is the style which most closely resembles old Victorian era fashion styles, which Lolita takes its inspiration from. Classic Lolita is not defined by specific prints or imagery, though most of them are more realistic than cartoon-like compared to what you might see in Sweet. Rather, it is largely defined by the structure and shape of the dress, giving off a more mature vibe. Classic Lolita usually requires more of an A-line petticoat, and the amount of poof is usually rather small, but it isn't non-existent. They tend to have much longer skirts though, so keep that in mind if you're a shorter Lolita and are concerned about how flattering a longer skirt might be for you. Classic Lolita cords usually don't have overly bright or overly dark colors, and accessories are usually toned down and simple. There's an emphasis on a more natural look, so wigs and heavy makeup are pretty uncommon and usually not recommended, but you can still use them if you would like. At least in terms of wigs. Makeup, you still want it to be relatively light. If you're a big fan of bonnets, Classic Lolita may definitely be for you. I highly recommend Classic to any new Lolitas who are wary about having a lot of attention directed at you for wearing the fashion. Let's face it, Sweet will always be an attention grabber, and Gothic will probably have some eyes directed your way as well, and if you're not interested in that amount of attention on your first go, a simple classic cord may be a good way to dip your toes in the fashion. Next, we'll look at Gothic Lolita, a style I have desperately tried to infiltrate but never really been able to hit the mark. Gothic Lolita is also inspired by Victorian fashion, specifically Gothic Victorian, and Maman Mathieu's Mana-sama is an icon for Gothic Lolita and aristocrat fashion, as the founder of the brand. Unlike Classic, Gothic Lolita can use either a bell or A-line shaped petticoat depending on the look you're going for. I personally see both pretty equally, so it really depends on what you prefer as well as the style of the dress you're wearing. Like Classic, the dresses can have a lot more length to them, so be aware of this if you're short. Gothic is very well known for its primarily black and otherwise dark color schemes with plenty of notable icons and motifs like crosses, coffins, bats, cathedrals, churches, and of course, roses. If you're a fan of blacks, navy, dark reds, and purples, and have an incredibly beautiful and elegant look, you'll probably gravitate more towards Gothic Lolita. Makeup and wigs vary from cord to cord. Wigs aren't uncommon to replicate Victorian hairstyles like curly ringlets, and you're almost always going to see dark makeup to truly pull a coordinate together. I recommend Gothic if you have an interest in the dark goth look in general, but I would be wary of trying it out if you fear you won't be able to pull it off. Remember, Gothic has a specific look to it, and it's not just about having dark colors or creepy motifs. For example, this is not Gothic. And if this is what you're looking for, it's fine, and we'll talk about it in a second. But it's not Gothic Lolita. Another pro to Gothic is that the goth scene has existed for ages, and you probably won't garner too much attention if you're wearing this on your own in public. I wouldn't personally worry about getting too many weird looks while wearing Gothic, but you probably won't go totally unnoticed since goth is still an alternative fashion. Finally, we'll be taking a look at Sweet. I don't consider myself to be a Sweet Lolita, but I do wear a lot of Sweet, and a lot of my inspiration from cords come from Sweet Lolita lookbooks and coordinates, so I do feel pretty confident in talking about it. Sweet is probably the most commonly seen style, and because of that, many newer Lolitas automatically find themselves gravitating towards Sweet at first. That said, Sweet isn't for everyone, and you'll very often see a lot of Lolitas overwhelmed by Sweet and quickly moving towards another substyle. Let's talk about how you'll know if Sweet is really for you. While pastels and cute animals are common in Sweet, plenty of dresses can classify as Sweet. If you find this kind of dress too much, maybe a non-printed one will work better for you. Florals are commonly seen in classic, but they can also be considered Sweet as well if they're in a more pastel-themed dress. While I personally love myself a dress with bunny rabbits and teddy bears, of course that may not be for everyone, which is why I wanted to bring up how vast the Sweet category is. A lot of themes and motifs fall under Sweet. That said, Sweet is still a substyle that values more over less. More hair accessories, more jewelry, more poof. Over-the-top Sweet is such a popular style these days that even a perfectly normal cord may seem like it's not enough, and you may feel pressure to need more, and more to wear Sweet. If you start to feel this way, I'd recommend the more subtle Sweet prints and themes. Marine themes, floral prints, tartan. There's tons of options that are available to you in Sweet. In terms of colors, pastels are a given, but you can find your fair share of whites, ivories, browns, and my personal favorites, black, in Sweet as well. It can't be ignored that Sweet is the most unusual of the styles to wear to your everyday average normie. You can expect a lot of odd looks and stares when wearing Sweet. That said, most of my time wearing Sweet personally has been met with loads of compliments, and I honestly don't think I've had a single negative experience wearing Sweet Lolita in public. If you're wary about busting out the pastel vomit dresses on the first go, I'd recommend starting with a tamer Sweet print on your first go round. So those are the main three styles you are most likely going to be the most familiar with and the one you're going to gravitate towards initially. However, there are several other substyles in Lolita fashion that I wanted to touch upon briefly that you may find interesting. Old school today refers to the non-printed, lace-heavy dresses that are recognized as the OG Lolita dresses. Most old school dresses are solid colors and they focus more on the construction of the dress rather than any particular print. Old school typically consists of a relatively simple style of coordinate with a lace headdress, simple jewelry, monocolored lace tights or socks, and rocking horse or solid black shoes. While old school may sound straightforward, it's easy to confuse a dress that simply has a solid color and a lot of lace as old school, when it really is more of a sweet dress inspired by old school. For that reason, research into the specifics of old school and how to determine if a dress fits into that category is always useful before attempting a coordinate. Just as a guide, Baby the Star Shine Bright has tons of nice old school dresses, and if you're interested in the style, I would recommend looking into them. Next, let's take a look at Chi and Wa Lolita. Chi is inspired by traditional Chinese wear, while Wa is inspired by traditional Japanese wear. As Lolita styles, they are definitely very different than the big three of what we're used to, and a lot more challenging to pull off. That said, they are perfectly legitimate styles to wear. Many Lolitas tend to recommend that newer Lolitas not try wearing these styles without experience in classic, sweet, or gothic, and while I don't disagree with that idea, as more experience is always better than less, I don't think you should be afraid to study and try these styles out if they're where your interest truly lies. Learn how they're coordinated, what accessories and shoes and hairstyles you use for them, just like any other style, and go for it without fear. I personally love wearing Chi and Wa. They do require a bit more research, but don't let that scare you away from these styles if you enjoy them. I definitely recommend Metamorphose if you have an interest in Wa, and she can be found all over Taobao. Just make sure you're looking into high quality producing brands and not something on the cheap side that can skew your view of cheap. Punk Lolita tends to overlap with Gothic and or Sweet depending on how you choose to style it. It's heavily inspired by Western punk, and you tend to see more darker colors as well as more plaids and tartans in punk. There can be an overlap between Punk Lolita and general punk fashion. For that reason, remember to stick to the silhouette and Lolita rules when wearing this style if you're going to wear it as Lolita. Otherwise, you may be told that your coordinate is not Lolita fashion. Otherwise, it's a great style for casual wear and even better if you want to blend in with normie fashion wearers. Sailor Lolita is inspired by nautical motifs and it features sailor collars and pleated skirts. While it's an overall uncommon substyle, it's actually very likely that a newer Lolita would probably attempt a sailor coordinate very early on in their journey, as a lot of cheap Lolita websites sell sailor-themed dresses and replicas. The style is otherwise pretty straightforward, simple to cord, and it tends to fall under the sweet category. Country also falls either under the sweet or classic category. They're usually extremely casual cords that are perfect for picnics and casual days out. Country tends to have floral or fruit themes, and they're very often coordinated with straw hats and baskets to really push that country vibe. Because they're so casual, it's easy for them to miss the mark as Lolita, so always remember the silhouette and some simple accessories with this style. Now let's talk about casual Lolita. It's difficult to properly describe casual, as any of the three main substyles can fall into the casual category. Casual Lolita can be thought of as a full Lolita coordinate, but in a less dressy way. Many times, newer Lolitas can confuse casual Lolita and an unfinished coordinate that doesn't hit all the marks due to a lack of accessories or other things that are needed for a full court at the time. This is something that should be avoided. Casual is a very tricky style to pull off for this reason, and I'm thinking about dedicating an entire video to casual Lolita in the future. But for now, casual typically replaces fancy bosses for cute ketsos, dressy JSKs and OPs for lighter salopettes and skirts, and tones down the accessories so they aren't quite so prominent. While the coordinate is toned down, it is still a fully finished Lolita coordinate. I cannot stress how easy it is to confuse unfinished with casual. Don't label a cord as casual as a substitute for I don't have everything that I could have. Casual should refer to a toned down daily wear that still follows every rule for Lolita. I wanted to end this video talking off with some controversial styles, I'll say in air quotes. Nurse Lolita, Maid Lolita, Idol Lolita are some terms you may have heard before, and they are understandably controversial. As Lolitas, we work very hard to not be confused with cosplayers, and wearing cords that are themed around nurses and maids are very easy to fall into the anime costume territory. Personally, I don't consider nurse, clown, or maid Lolita to be legitimate styles. While medical or circus-themed dresses like Fancy Hospital or Magical Etoile are perfectly fine and more than okay, an outfit that completely lacks any use of the Lolita rules other than just being cutesy doesn't constitute as Lolita fashion. Remember, Lolita is a part of the kawaii umbrella, but anything kawaii isn't necessarily Lolita. Idol Lolita, on the other hand, is more debatable. Some idol dresses aren't Lolita at all, while some can fit into the fashion. Proper dress length and appropriate styling will work fine and fit under the sweet category pretty seamlessly, but super short skirts and a lack of any clear Lolita silhouette won't be considered Lolita. Always ask your fellow Lolitas about any of these styles if you're unsure of whether or not of those styles will count as Lolita. But again, it really depends on the make of the dress. Themes are always fine, but something that's pretty much just a costume and doesn't have the silhouette or follow any of the other rules are not Lolita. And with that, the first part of the video is out of the way. Hopefully you've got at least an idea of what style you're going to focus on when you're starting out your wardrobe. With that, there's one other thing you'll want to decide before you start swiping that card. The second thing you want to consider is, what colorway are you going to focus on for your wardrobe? What? I can only wear one color? Well, no, of course you can wear however many or however few colors you want. But I personally recommend picking one, no more than two main colors to focus on when you're just starting out your wardrobe. But why? So many Lolitas have every color of the pastel rainbow in their closet, why can't I? Do remember that most Lolitas have been building up their wardrobes for years at this point. Many of us naturally gravitate towards a favorite color, and of course, after a few months or even years of nothing but pastel pink, it can get tiring to not have much versatility. But as a newer Lolita, I highly recommend starting with a single main colorway. The main reason for this is primarily monetarily. Let's say you're a new Lolita and you're considering starting off with 10 dresses. Yeah, this is just an example. I don't know how many of us have that kind of money, but let's just use that. Let's say that 4 of them are pink, 2 are sax, 1 is yellow, 1 is mint, 1 is lavender, and 1 is chocolate, because you gotta be special. Sounds fine on paper, right? But let's take a closer look. Do you see the problem that you've put yourself in here? It is going to be a daunting task trying to get accessories that go with all of those colorways. At best, you can find some cheaper pieces on Taobao, but that is going to be spending a lot, considering you just spent a few months collecting dresses, and realistically, you're only going to buy accessories for the dresses you want to wear right away, and the rest are just going to be sitting in your closet. And let's say you're fine with not wearing a few of them right away. That's understandable, and what I'd recommend over buying yourself out of house and home trying to get more accessories. But then ask yourself the question, why bother buying those dresses in the first place if you won't wear them right away? I understand that the secondhand market is fickle, and a dream dress can be gone in an instant if you don't buy it when you see it. But if we're talking about Taobao brands, a lot of the time those dresses aren't going anywhere. At least not as quickly as brand. And even for big brands, you're always going to have another chance to get many of them. It's simply not in your best interest to buy that many dresses if you're not even going to be able to cord them right away. Then there's the alternative issue. You buy a handful of accessories that can go with every dress you bought, enough to give at least a single cord to every dress. A single solid cord. That's great and all, but now you're in the position where every individual cord has no versatility. You're always wearing them the same way each time, which again begs the question of, why buy so many dresses only to end up with them still being corded the same way each time? Sure, some of your pinks, yellows, and sax accessories can probably overlap somewhat reasonably, but your chocolates, even your mints and lavenders might not mix and match perfectly. And this hasn't even considered the prospect of your biggest pieces. Let's say that 6 of your 10 dresses are JSKs. That means you now need to find a blouse that matches every single one of them, and that's not going to be as easy as it sounds. It's either that, or you're going to be buying 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 blouses, which again, is a lot of spending. Colors vary, and you can't just buy a pink blouse hoping it matches the pink in every single dress you have with a shred of pink in it. No matter what you do, you're either going to end up overspending or not getting the versatility you wanted in the first place. Because as we go back to that single, handful of accessories that can go with every dress you bought, that's good and all, but okay, you bought 1 necklace, 1 pair of socks, maybe a couple of bracelets that can go with everything, and you wear those socks, those bracelets, those necklaces, that blouse with every single dress? Is it really as versatile as you wanted it to be? My suggestion? Pick up a couple of pieces, but make sure they're the same color or combination of colors. Pink and sax are incredibly popular in Lolita, so if you want your first handful of dresses to be one of those too, you can probably make it work. Don't buy 10 dresses either. Narrow it down to your top 2 or 3. Now you can budget a lot more accessories. Pick up a couple of blouses, solid color head bows, some neutral wrist cuffs, a purse, a universal wig if needed, and some small accessories like bracelets, necklaces, and hair clips that work with all 3 of your dresses. Now, instead of having a ton of dresses with only 1 or 2 looks, you now have 2 or 3 dresses but a handful of different ways to cord them. There is no shame in having a smaller wardrobe at first. I would much rather you have 2 complete cords that you can confidently wear out than to have 10 dresses that you can really only wear a few of and only a few different ways that feel relatively incomplete. You may be ready to argue back, but it's going to be a huge pain to add new colors into my wardrobe later on down the line. I'll have nothing to work with. Why not just have a few things in advance? I understand that, and I don't actually disagree with it, but I wouldn't suddenly add in a new color out of nowhere. Be sure you plan to actually buy red dresses if you're starting to pick up more strawberry themed accessories, then you have dresses with some red actually in them. You can also start small. Try to get matching accessories with your new dress colors when you can. Matching head bows and socks can make your work a lot easier. Now you can focus on a bit of your jewelry, and voila! A new color is now slowly but surely making its way into your wardrobe. There's no rush to go hog wild on day 1 with any aspect of your wardrobe. This is neither a race nor a competition. Take things at your own pace. In conclusion, there is no right or wrong way to build a wardrobe. These are simply my tips for new Lolitas who are a bit intimidated as to how to start or are early on in their journey and maybe running into some of the issues we talked about in this video. It's fine if you disagree with what I said here. It's fine if you did what I said not to do and it worked out fine for you. I didn't do a lot of these things and I wouldn't say I'm struggling with any aspect of my wardrobe. But if I could go back and tell myself anything, a lot of what was covered in this video would be included in it. This video is primarily centered around monetary investment, and my goal is to help you spend as little money as possible on things you don't need, or to avoid spending money on things that you don't actually want instead of the things that you do want. The less you feel pressure to buy, the better. Remember, this is a luxury fashion. It's an expensive hobby. Let's not pretend otherwise. But that doesn't mean you have to break your bank to be a Lolita. Planning your wardrobe ahead in small ways can be a huge difference between smooth sailing or internal panicking. Let me know in the comment section below how you started building your wardrobe. What style did you start with, and do you still wear it now? Have you picked up any new styles or colors? Do you have any tips of your own to share? Let us know in the comments below, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you in my next video.